Good evening, everybody, or I guess technically morning, 12:01 a.m. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing right now. Not only did I work 12 hours at work today, but I also have to be up at 5 in the morning. So this is probably not the right time to do this, but here I am doing it anyway, because I'm that damn dedicated to entertaining you. Hey, if you appreciate that, you could always hit the like button or consider subscribing to the channel. It is Callous Draft League Week 5 content, and it is FatYoshi69, who I don't know if you guys have seen on the channel up to this point, and I believe he does have just a 1-3 record coming into this, but he's got a cool name. But the reason that we're featuring this is actually because his opponent, ALargeMongoose, undefeated coming into this, 4-0 and on a win streak and therefore a point bonus streak as well. Furthermore, these teams are very much in playoff contention. At the time of this recording, the green team still overwhelmingly in first place. However, orange team, which is the ALargeMongoose team, is in second place and just 2 points behind them in the mix. There's actually two teams tied for third and fourth at 24 points, and then there's another team with 23 points right behind. So it's very, very close. The point is, this match and all the matches this week, but really, really this match, big, big playoff implications. If Fat Yoshi can pull off the upset, if you're comfortable calling it that, that would be huge. That would shut off the point streak for ALargeMongoose, and that would get blue right up in it. But if ALargeMongoose wins, which on paper he's supposed to, pre-draft of course, then that would be a 2-point win for him, and that would really, really put Orange in a good place to make a playoff run. So pretty big stakes given that this is the second to last week of the regular season. Let's get into it. Fat Yoshi, like I said, is on the blue team. He's going to be our player 1 on the left. ALargeMongoose, he is on the orange team, our player 2 on the right. The first ban, of course, goes to player 1, and he is opting for Metagross. Pretty common ban. Don't see that guy get through too often these days. Flip side, Snorlax going to get removed by ALargeMongoose. This one's interesting for Fat Yoshi. He's going to get rid of Blissey. Okay. I assume it's just going to be an obligatory T-Tower ban then for Mongoose. And it is. And then that means it's going to be pick of the litter from what's remaining for Fat Yoshi. Most people in this situation would take Skarmory. Celebi is also one of the things that I think would be very much in the conversation. But Fat Yoshi is going to do neither of those things as he kicks us off with Zapdos, which is a fine Mon, but I don't know that it's necessarily better than Skarmory or Celebi. And of course, ALargeMongoose is going to take both of those. Why decide between them when you can just take them both? The follow-up for Fat Yoshi is going to be Salamence and Gengar. The Gengar pick I like and agree with. The Salamence pick, I could take or leave. I personally think that Starmie is definitely better than Salamence and arguably better than Gengar. But just staying on the Mence for a moment, not only do I think the Starmie is better than Salamence, but you also have the Skarmory on the other side, so you are even more incentivized to take good rapid spinners. So I personally there probably would have gone with Starmie over Salamence. But Mence is a good Mon. It is a bit overrated in this format, I think, because there's so many bulky waters, and they're all good, and they all kind of counter it. Not to mention the omnipresence of T-Wave in this format, and the fact that many, many things that aren't bulky waters can still have Ice Beam. So I think Mence is kind of a trap. It's obviously a good Mon, but I don't know that it's good enough to pick this early, though a lot of people seem to disagree with me, and they still do it. We'll see if he ends up getting value when the games actually get played. Interesting to me on the flip side that Starmie isn't taken here either, but I can understand why these picks are made. So Aerodactyl here is a threat against literally all three of these, so it makes a ton of sense into what Yoshi has so far. And then he's going to scoop up my Milotic, which some people believe is the best bulky water anyway. And even if it weren't, it is certainly good into Salamence. But picks that continue to puzzle me a little bit for FatYoshi. I'm surprised he doesn't go, say, Swampert here, given the Aerodactyl on the other side, and also because Milotic was just taken, and he doesn't want to be left out of the bulky water war, but he doesn't do that. He's going to go with Fortress and Regice, which, to be clear, are two Pokemon that I like quite a bit. Regice I view as a top 10 Mon in this format. Fortress, maybe not top 10 for me, but definitely good. Again, for me, Starmie definitely would have been picked somewhere already. Kind of surprised that has not been the case, but I do like these pokes for sure. And yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily. I could see why he would pick Fori. I could see why he would pick Regice here. So, like, I guess maybe I just harken back to the men's pick and I would have just taken Starmie then. But in this situation, I could see why you would take either of these over Starmie. I mean, you don't want to get cut off of the best spikers early on. You don't want to let him have both Skarm and Fori, so you take Fori here to prevent that. And then Regice, super effective hits against literally every single thing on the other side, and the special walls are going to be hard to come by with the Bliss and the Lax both banned out and the Celebi on the other side. You better grab one real quick before you get shut out of them. So I'm fine with these picks now. I just may have done a couple things, or at least one thing, differently earlier. So finally, Starmie does get taken on the other side, but the other pick here is unusual to me. Jolteon, huh? I think there's a defensive element to this pick, because typically Jolteon, while good, is not a round one pick. However, he may look at it, he might see his own Skarm, his own Aerodactyl, his own Milotic, his own Zapdos, all of whom do not want to be against electric Pokemon, specifically very fast electric Pokemon that can outspeed them. So it might be a bit of a defensive Jolteon pick. It's tempting there. I wonder, I might have pushed my luck if I were Mongoose. I guess it depends on how much credit you give your opponent. If I were Mongoose there, instead of Jolteon, I might have just taken Swampert or whatever you think the next best thing available is, probably Swampert, and then just pushed my luck and tried to ban out the Jolteon if we get that far. It does give the opponent a one pick, or I guess one turn of picks, which is 2 picks, window to possibly select that Jolteon. And like I said, if you give him credit, if you think your opponent is good, maybe he will. Would I give FatYoshi that credit? I don't know. I don't know that guy well enough. I'm a little bit of a gambler. I probably would have taken Swampert and pushed my luck, but there is a lot of discipline here to take the Jolteon because, like I said, even though, I mean, he may or may not play it, but I don't think he's picking it because it's so good into what's on the other side. It's fine into what's on the other side, but I think this was largely a defense-minded pick because it's very threatening against a lot of the stuff that Mongoose has. Jolteon, like I said, while good, is almost, I don't want to say almost never, we've seen it a time or two, but is the vast majority of the time not a round 1 pick. Probably closer to a super viable round 2 pick. Regardless, rounding out round 1, Swampert, of course. I'd be shocked if that weren't picked. And a little bit of a surprise here as well. Heracross is another one where I think it's good, but it's not generally a round 1 pick. In this case, he's staring down the Celebi and the Starmie that it can obviously really, really hurt with Megahorn. It's also pretty good 1v1 against Milo. It can one-hit KO Jolteon potentially. It seems pretty good against the other side. Not perfect with the Skarm and the Arrow, but certainly threatening. And I can't think of anything egregious like, oh man, are you sure you want to let that through? You can make arguments here. You could take Registeel, Hariyama, Medicham, that kind of Pokemon. Maybe if you want another Spiker, you look at like Cloyster or something. But yeah, all things considered, when it's kind of a nuanced pick based specifically on what your opponent has, I can get down with the Heracross. So I think that's a smart pick for FatYoshi. I think right now that looks like it'll be a pretty good threat given what's on the other side. So we bounce over to ALargeMongoose for bans, and this ban, to me, further confirms my already existing belief that there is a big defensive element to the Jolteon pick when he now keeping in mind that he gets the pick after these bans. So he could take this Pokemon if he wanted it, but he's going to ban Raikou. And like I said, rather than thinking, oh, an electric Pokemon is so good against what's on the other side, I think what's actually happening here is he's really worried about electric Pokemon against him. So he's removing them, whether it is by picking them or simply banning them out. Either way, doesn't want his opponent to be able to have them, and I think that's what's happening here. So FatYoshi is going to remove Moltres. He's probably looking at it and seeing Heracross, Regice, Fortress, all of which are Fire Weak. And then some of the things over here that aren't Fire Weak still don't take fire attacks well, like Gengar or like Zapdos. Will-O-Wisp is also a threat. Moltres really does threaten to various extents every single thing that FatYoshi has picked so far, and I think it is as simple as that with the thought process. ALargeMongoose is going to ban out Claydol. This is the first one from him that I'm a little bit unsure about. I'm not clear where he's going with that. I mean, currently the spiker spinner count is even. They both have one spiker and one spinner respectively. I'm not sure that either player is blatantly winning the spiker spinner war. And then additionally, I mean, as far as picking Claydol against T-Tar, not a factor because it's banned. As far as picking Claydol against Electrics, not really a factor. They only have one each. I'm not clear that I understand the Claydol ban. I mean, you could be trying to cut spinners off of your opponent, but like I said, you have an equal amount of spikers and spinners right now, so you're also cutting off that spinner from yourself. I don't know. I don't really get that one. I don't know if he views it as a Scarm counter, if he just doesn't want to play against, like, Refresh Doll or something, but I don't know that Doll is that great in this format. It's okay, but it doesn't blow me away. It's kind of passive and doesn't really hurt anything a lot of the time. We'll see, but that's the first ban that I look at it and I go, don't really understand that one. And then FatYoshi is going to follow up with basically the same ban. He banned Moltres, now he bans Charizard. It's the exact same concept. The fire plus whatever hidden power, fire grass probably with the Swampert. That combination is deadly against this. Maybe it is a little less deadly than Moltres would be, because Moltres can have both Will-O-Wisp for Salamence and HP Grass for Swampert, whereas Charizard has to pick whether it wants to hurt the Mence or the Pert, but probably not both. But it's still a threat to the overwhelming majority of the team for FatYoshi, and I could see why he would want to get rid of that. Those are two pretty consistent bans, and obviously he's taking a look and understanding, accurately in my opinion, what his current weaknesses are. So that bounces us over to... where are the round 3 picks here? It's never on 50. It's always on 75. Why is it not... why isn't it fitting the screen? I'm confused. I've never had this issue before. I just noticed that. We don't usually have this problem. What did I do differently here? I mean, 50 looks terrible. And like 90 or 100 or whatever is way too big, but I normally put it on 75 and there's not any kind of issue. I'm not clear why that isn't fitting right now. The whole formatting looks different than it usually does. It looks messed up, and I'm not entirely clear why that is. I don't know. Not exactly clear what happened here. I'm going to... well, that stinks. I guess I'll move it over like this when we get to round 3, and we'll have to not get a full view of the bands over here. I don't know if my cat stepped on a button and messed with it or what, but I will have to address that when I get a moment. I just noticed that, but that is not normally the way that it looks. Okay, well, deal with it after. Sorry about that little distraction there. It just caught my eye. So we're back over to ALargeMongoose for his round 2 picks, and he is going to go with Registeel and Hariyama. Fair enough. Let's see. Actually, fighters... I mean, Hariyama's just a good poke anyway, but... Fighters don't necessarily blow me away, actually, against FatYoshi. He's pretty padded. He's got the Zapdos Salamence resistance, the Gengar immunity, and in fact, the only fight weakness right now is just the Regice. So that's... I mean, again, Hariyama's a good poke. It doesn't necessarily have to be an attacker, though that is a huge plus, because there are a lot of very relevant fighting weaknesses in this format, but just using it as a wall, totally viable. Interesting, though. I wonder if there was something better available, just given the state of the matchup. And then Registeel, same thing. I don't think it's necessarily meant as an attacker or meant to counter anything in particular or what have you. I think that it's just one of the better special walls available, and they're going to quickly run out. We're all of a sudden at a point where the next best special wall is whatever, is Umbreon, is Hypno, is whatever along those lines. Certainly the Regis, Flax, Bliss, those tend to be the premier ones, and of course you can make Celebi or Zapdos into a special wall to some extent as well. So I don't know that these picks were necessarily targeted at anything or had anything that FatYoshi did in mind. I think that they are just two generically powerful mons. On the flip side, I like these mons for sure. It's going to be Medicham and Dragonite, two of my favorites in most draft formats that I have most definitely drafted or had someone that I'm drafting for pick many times. Always happy with those mons. Can't go too far wrong. The Medicham, again, I don't see too many fighting weaknesses so far for ALargeMongoose, so I don't think it's necessarily specifically I need to prioritize fighters, he's super fighting weak, what have you. But I think that Medicham is a generically good mon, and I think that you're not going to go too far wrong picking it, even if right now at this very moment it isn't a world beater. And then I say the same thing about Dragonite every time. It will always be good. You can always customize it to do whatever you need it to do in any given matchup. You cannot go wrong with Dragonite. It's like legit the one Pokemon, like atop my list in this format, where the following statement applies. It will be above average or better in every single matchup. There is no bad Dragonite matchup. It does not exist. The thing will do something no matter what. It really will. On the flip side, for ALargeMongoose, he's going to go with Weezing and Gyarados. All right. Again, I think we're just going with generic good rather than targeting something in particular. The Weezing is often picked as a counter against fighters, which there aren't a ton of. There are two, so like more than nothing. It's picked as a counter for Lax, which is not going to be relevant here because it's banned. It's picked against strictly physical things, Regirock, Flygon, that kind of thing. Not applicable here. But, again, generically good mon. Can't go too far wrong. I'm a big Weezing fan myself. Gyarados into Zapdos, always a little bit scary. There's also other Thunderbolt users or potential Thunderbolt users. Gengar, Regice, Dragonite on the other side. So Gyarados maybe doesn't blow me away here as much as it does in other matchups. But I've noticed every time I have the Gyarados discussion with basically anybody, I'm always higher on him. I seem to just like Gyarados better and more than most people do. And I support the pick, even if there are some things on the other side that are probably a little bit scary for him. Alakazam and Kingdra, the retaliation for FatYoshi. I mean, the fact that he has both Gengar and Alakazam, I think he is begging his opponent to take Houndoom, or maybe to a lesser extent Umbreon, so I would certainly look into that now if I were ALargeMongoose. I think that these are both fine mons, but like I said, having Gar and Zam, not Tar, I was thinking in my head of Pursuit users, but having both Gar and Zam on the same squad, begging for Houndoom and Umbreon, I think, from ALargeMongoose, and we'll see if he is thinking the same way that I'm thinking and opts to respond in that way. regardless of that, as it stands right now, I do think the Alakazam could be quite a threat against this team. So I think that was a good pickup, and I think it's something that ALargeMongoose is going to need to respond to. As far as the Kingdra, yeah, I mean, maybe not as deadly as the Zam. Calm Mind and speed and coverage is pretty hard to argue with, but the Kingdra to a lesser extent can probably perform a similar function due to the lack of true, proper special walls on Mongooses. And the difference being something like a full bulk, full special Yama can maybe wall the Kingdra, but it sure as hell is not going to wall the Zam. And the same thing could be said elsewhere, like maybe the Skarm can eat a hit or two from Kingdra, or can protect to stall out the rain, eventually roar it out, whatever. The Skarm is definitely not stalling out the Zam, just as an example. Moving on to the other side, it is Glalie and Vaporeon, so a monopoly on bulky waters starting to form here. He's got what a lot of people consider three of the top four, certainly. The Milotic, the Starmie, the Vaporeon. It's only the Swampert on the other side. There are still some options, Slowbro probably being the most noteworthy one available, but the bulky water advantage does seem to be shifting in the direction of ALargeMongoose. And while FatYoshi does not currently have a bunch of Fire Mons, there are still things, the Salamence, the Dragonite, and presumably others still to come, that you definitely want to have a bulky water in order to counter. Glalie also, arguably, the best spiker still available. Some people prefer Cloyster. I think I, generally speaking, like Glalie a little bit better myself. But regardless of that, he is now ahead in the spike and spin war with the addition of the Glalie. Not to be outdone, however, Yoshi is immediately going to respond with Cloyster and get himself right back in it. In fact, he kind of sort of arguably overtakes him in that he's also picking up a second spinner in addition to his second spiker, and then he's going to take Regirock as well. And I think end of round 2 Regirock, you cannot go too far wrong. All the Regis quite good in this format. As far as a rock attacker specifically, it's fine over here. Good against Aerodactyl, good against Gyarados, good against Glalie. There are obviously a couple rock resists, the Yama, the Registeel, what have you, but I don't think you can go too far wrong with Regirock. Like I said, all three Regis are good. There's even some people in this that think Regirock is better than Registeel. Not sure that I necessarily share that opinion, but I'm certainly open to hearing it. There are definitely matchups where I'd rather have Regirock than Registeel, so I think that's fine. But to me, Regice is clearly the best one in this format, and I don't think there's too many people who would disagree. And like I said, grabbing the Cloyster there is both a second spiker and a second spinner. He has both of the 2-in-1 spiker spinners in Fori and Cloyster respectively. So the spike spin war relatively even. The advantage right now is that it is +1 spinner for FatYoshi, but neither player dominating in that regard as it stands. And then wrapping up the round for ALargeMongoose, going to go with two fast threats here of his own. He's going to go with Sceptile and also Jinx. Sceptile definitely loves having spikes on the team, which looks like something he's going to be able to make happen. A nice fast threat. There are a couple of grass weaknesses over here, but nothing too egregious, but I still like Sceptile. Not quite as versatile as Dragonite, but it is a somewhat customizable mon that can have a variety of possibly good sets. And then Jinx has just been a consistent overperformer thus far in this format, and I'm looking forward to seeing that dude, or I guess gal, I believe it is a 100% female Pokemon. Looking forward to seeing that gal in action and seeing just how far it can go. Maybe, just maybe, it should even be a round 1 pick. These players don't think so, but it has been so damn good in practice that the results are getting hard to ignore. So we go to the third and final round of bands. And then, like I said, I'm going to just scooch it over real quick so we can see the screen a little more properly. And then I will obviously fix this going forward. I'm not clear exactly what I did, but I'll make it back the way it was before. But let's get to those bands. We've got FatYoshi removing Chansey, apparently feeling like he's got the advantage in the special threat department, which is interesting because his opponents got Starmie, Jolteon, Sceptile, Jinx. I mean, those are all pretty damn viable. Hell, even offensive Celebi maybe. He's got plenty of special threats on the other side. I mean, you could even argue that he may have more, but I guess it's pretty even. I mean, you see Zapdos, Gengar, Regis, Alakazam, Kingdra on this side. They are going blow for blow with the special threats, evidently. So it's interesting that he removes Chansey because you can make an argument that either player would really appreciate a special wall in this situation, but Chansey hasn't been picked a lot. Many drafts it just goes unpicked. I'm not clear if that's a wasted ban or not. It might be because, like I said, it just doesn't get picked very often. So I wonder if realistically, if ALargeMongoose was actually going to grab that, that might have just been a wasted ban. But I could see the strategy. I could see where he's going with it, and we'll see if he opts to push the special angle even further in the third and final round. The ban for ALargeMongoose is going to be Magneton. That's a pretty straightforward one. He's the Skarm drafter. He's trying to not get it eaten by a Magneton. Simple enough. FatYoshi is going to remove Umbreon, which it's kind of along the lines of the Houndoom thing that I suggested, but not only are we using a ban to get rid of a Pursuit user to protect the Gar and the Alakazam, but he's also taking another poke that can act as a special wall. So he pretty clearly believes that he's got the advantage in the special attacking department. He clearly believes he doesn't need a special wall, or he would not be banning them out. I mean, maybe not Chansey, because I just don't think that Mon is very good, but I don't know, I kind of think he could have taken an Umbreon, but he seems content. He seems to think he does not need special walls and that he has an edge in that department. I don't know that I necessarily agree with his evaluation of where this draft stands, but that's the way that he sees it, and I think he is being consistent in that if the way that he sees it, if the way that he's evaluating it is correct, then these picks make sense along those lines. And finally, it's going to be a Ludicolo ban for ALargeMongoose, maybe to get rid of double Swift Swim or that kind of thing. I don't think Ludicolo is that great, but interestingly, Ludicolo is another poke that's like a kind of sort of pseudo special wall. It's weird to me that both players are banning out things that are along the lines of a special wall. I think they both think that they have the advantage in the special attacking department, which is very unusual. Usually these drafts have pretty clear, okay, you've got the bulky water advantage, but I've got the spiker advantage, but I've got the faster team, but I've got all the spinners, whatever. But I don't know. They seem to, in this case, not agree on who's got the advantage here. They seem to both be drafting like they think they have the superior special threats. Very interesting. I'm very intrigued by where they take this in the third round, since they apparently both think they have the advantage right now. Scoot that over to a good angle, like so. Sure, I guess. All right. The final round of picks, starting with FatYoshi, he's going to go with Flygon and Venusaur. Yeah. You know, when I look at the Flygon, man, ground as an attacking type seems pretty damn bad against Mongoose. It seems awful almost. Like, man, the Flygon seems terrible. At first I'm like, okay, that's fine. Flygon's a good Mon, but that seems terrible now that I actually look at it. Seriously, go Mon for Mon. Flygon against Skarm, lose. Flygon against Celebi, it resists your EQ. Flygon against Arrow is a loss 1v1 usually. Obviously, Milo and Starmie destroy you and can have Ice Beam. Jolteon you do hit super effectively with EQ, but it might just have HP Ice, and no matter what, it outspeeds you, so you're never really EQing it. It'll just either kill you or Baton Pass out of the way. Registeel is like one of the only things on the team. Fine, Flygon's good against that. Yama on Flygon, kind of a wash. Doesn't really have a clear winner. Weezing destroys Flygon. Gyarados doesn't care about EQ. Glalie can eat an EQ and then kill you. Vaporeon can eat an EQ or two and then kill you. Sceptile can outspeed you and kill you. Jinx can outspeed you and kill you. Man, Flygon actually seems putrid in this matchup, so as much as I like Flygon in draft formats in general, maybe not so much in EO when everything's face up, but I like Flygon in this format for sure, generally speaking. But man, it seems really, really bad in this particular matchup. So I don't want to like fault Yoshi for it, because if you don't like really look at it one for one, especially if they're just doing it with a tree and if they don't have a visual, but if you can't actually see it and if you don't take the time to really look at it mon for mon, I could see why by default you go, hey, you know what, I could use another rock resist here. I'm kind of short, which is true. He really doesn't have that many rock resists. Hey, I've got a couple rock weaknesses. I've got 5 of them, in fact, and, you know, I think I could really use another rock resist here. Flygon's a good mon. It's good with my spikes. Yeah, you know, that's all true. But, man, on paper is one thing, in practice is another, and the EQ seems so bad against Mongoose's team. Really interesting. I've, like, never seen a Flygon be so bad, but it seems terrible in the matchup. Moving on to the Venusaur. Sure, I mean, multiple Grassmons on the other side, the Jolteon on the other side. It's got a sleep attack. Venusaur seems fine. Been another overperformer so far. Doesn't like sweep games the way that Jinx does, but pretty solid wall, and it basically has recover. A recover with less PP, but effectively recover, given the fact that T-Tire is banned so often. It does have a move to click and restore 50% of his HP, which is cool. On the other side, we're going to have Blaziken and Porygon 2. Let's see. Yeah, I could see a lot of things that Blaziken would threaten. Like I said, fighters in general are maybe not incredible against Yoshi. He's actually pretty padded. He did add 2 fighting weaknesses in Cloyster and Regirock, but he's got far more resistances than weaknesses as it stands. As far as fire as an attacking type against FatYoshi, it's reasonable. I mean, again, I could see multiple resistances, but the Venusaur, the Fori, the Regice, the Heracross, you got some stuff that you want to hit with fire. I don't know how the Blaziken's going to be in the matchup. A lot of stuff on the other side does outspeed it, and there are resistances on the other side, but as we have learned time and time again, the flavor of the month seems to be Flail Gyarados sweeping people. But back before that, in the old days, in the dark ages, we did see multiple Blaziken reversal sweeps, and that is still a very real threat. So Blaziken, even though sometimes on paper not great, doesn't have amazing matchups, reversal is very, very deadly and can legit just win the game on its own. Blaziken is not a mon to ever be underestimated. Porygon 2. A little bit of protection for the Jolteon, and I guess to a lesser extent the Vaporeon, but I don't think you're really worried about Vaporeon attacking all that often. It also gets the trace ability against Flygon, which is one of the better targets. And that's pretty much the gist of it. There's no Dugtrio thus far. It is a, quote, obviously not literally, but it is a bulky water-esque Pokemon, and that is going to, again, further dry out the options for Yoshi if he eventually wants to take another bulky water. Slowbro, like I said, I think is probably the best one still available. That's what I would do at some point if I were him. But the bulky water war seems to have largely been won by a ALargeMongoose. On the other side, Gardevoir and Donphan. Interesting. Those are not the 2 Mons. If I were guessing what he was going to pick, neither of those would have been my guess. Gardevoir is a diverse threat. It, like Porygon 2, has the trace ability. Hell, maybe the Porygon 2 pick is what made him think of Gardevoir. Maybe that's what put the idea into his head. I don't know. But there is the Gardevoir, and that, like P2, with trace, can do all the things that Porygon 2 would do. So it can trace Volt Absorb, it can trace Water Absorb. It also doesn't have to have trace. It can also just have Synchronize, which can be a useful ability as well. Gardevoir has Wish, has Will-O-Wisp, a very diverse move pool, is just fast enough to be a threat, even if it's not lightning speed. Very diverse, has Calm Mind, has a massive base 120 special attack stat, hits really hard. I like me some Gardevoir. He probably could have held off and gotten it a little bit later without too many consequences, without too much of a risk of his opponent grabbing it. And even more so than before with Gengar, Alakazam, Gardevoir. Hell, they're even all lined up for you. I really feel like ALargeMongoose should take Houndoom, but that aside, I like me some Gardevoir, no problem. Donphan, arguably the best spinner still available. I would say that it probably is. Blastoise is probably a good option, and then to a lesser extent, you've got your Armaldos and Tentacruels of the world. But Donphan is a good pickup if he wants to really be safe against spikes, which he probably does, given the fact that there are already 2 spikers on the other side. Now, Articuno and Sableye. Love me some Articuno. Think that guy is really underrated in this. A great special wall, a late special wall, an underappreciated special wall. There are 0, literal actual 0 fire attackers right now for Fat Yoshi. So that makes the Articuno much safer. There's only 1 stab electric user. And there are things here that can learn Rock Slide, but not that many. And only 1 of them gets stab on it. So Articuno, I think, is going to be generally pretty safe. It loves spikes, and that is a big value late game special wall pickup. I've seen quite a few people pick up round 3 Articuno, and it seems good to me every single time. I think that Mon needs to bump up people's tier lists and be respected more and picked earlier, because special walls are hard to come by in this format, and they're really valuable, and Articuno is great bang for the buck. As far as Sableye, that does seem to be the preferred ghost other than Gengar, obviously, in a lot of matchups. Whether or not that will protect his spikes, TBD. Some of these spinners have an easier time with Sableye than others, but we've seen it put to great use, mainly by Zakaru in the past. And, I mean, he's proven that the Mon is at least playable, at least decent. We'll see if ALargeMongoose can get the same results from it. Miltank, and now super epic Ampharos from Fat Yoshi. Love me some Miltank, seems pretty late. The thick fat application here, it's got a couple uses. Glalie, not Blaziken because you just get hit with a fighting attack. Articuno does give him a Bell option, that is a second Bell user alongside Dragonite, and then Ampharos is a third Bell user. So if he thinks it's important to have access to Bell on every team, voila! Just like that, now you do. Miltank has been another overperformer. We've seen multiple Curse Miltank sweeps, and it can also function as Blissey Jr. if you just want to go T-Wave, Heal Bell, whatever normal move, and Milk Drink. Think that is totally viable as well. Definitely a Miltank fan, not just because it's my favorite poke, but I do legitimately, functionally think that it is good in this format. The Ampharos, not a big Ampharos fan myself. It's like a random counter pick to like Raikou and stuff in Emerald Open or whatever, but I don't like it as much in this format, and I don't really see too many applications. There are some electric weaknesses on the other side. Scar, Milo, Starmie, Gyra, Vaporeon, Articuno, whatever. I get why you want an electric attacker, but I don't know. Ampharos as a whole kind of underwhelms me. Kind of slow, not the most versatile move pool. It's playable. I don't think it's like an unpickable Mon, but not a Mon that I'm ever going to get excited about. On the flip side, Arcanine and Breloom. I'm in the camp big time. A lot of people just rush and start picking whatever in round 3. I really think the third round picks matter. I think you can get big value and get things that make teams and things that matter. And yeah, I think that Arcanine and Breloom are high quality pokes that could easily both end up on a team somewhere. I don't think these are just throwaway, hey, we're late in the draft kind of picks. I like these Mons both quite a bit. Going back to checking how is Fire as an attacking type. We just had this conversation with Blaziken. Let's look again. Arcanine, first of all, actually walls the crap out of Gengar because it can take Thunderbolts and Ice Punches all day, and you also can't Will-O-Wisp it, so it's good as a pick against Gengar. As far as Fire as an attacking type, we already did this, but Fori, Regice, Heracross, Venusaur, a couple other weaknesses, plenty of resistances as well. Also gives you the option of extreme speed if you're worried about shenanigans. Doesn't look like there are too many ways to have reversal cheese over here if you're Fat Yoshi. Perhaps the Metacham goes down that road, but most of this other stuff, the Heracross and the Metacham are the two big ones, but there's not too much cheese. Extreme speed, nevertheless, good to have in the back pocket. Intimidate is also a good ability for sure. And then, yeah, Breloom. I mean, Spore is broken. Fighter's generally good in this format. Fighter's maybe not amazing against this configuration, but it's never going to be too bad. And basically, you just baton pass to it and click Spore for free, and you cannot go too far wrong. Alrighty, wrapping this up, the final two picks for Fat Yoshi. Man, I thought we were going to live my dream of a Dugtrio not drafted draft, but alas, it is not to be. Better late than never, it is good old Dugtrio. And as always, I look at it and it seems terrible. Awful against Skarm. Can kill the Celebi, but often doesn't and gets killed by the Celebi. Terrible against Darrow. Terrible against Milo. Okay against Starmie. Never does anything against Jolteon. It outspeeds you and baton passes out. Okay against the Rock. Not good against Yama. Terrible against Weezing and Gyarados. Whatever with Glalie. Terrible against Vaporeon. Whatever with Sceptile. Probably loses. Can beat Jinx, but can also super duper not beat Jinx. Can beat Blaziken, but can also super duper not beat Blaziken. Obviously loses to Porygon 2. Terrible against Articuno. Okay at best against Sableye. Somewhat okay against Arcanine, but it can possibly live and then just kill you with Flamethrower plus Extreme Speed, or depending on how low you are, just kill you with Extreme Speed. And then I guess it's good against Loom. Overall, far, far more. This is garbage than targets that are actually good, in my opinion. And yeah, if I were a ALargeMongoose, I would hope that my opponent brings Dugtrio, because I think it's going to be bad way more than it's good. Yeah, you guys know how I feel about Dugtrio in general. There's been a handful of times, if you actually watch all these videos, where I do actually praise people for taking it, and I do genuinely believe that it belongs, then it's a good pick. But the vast majority of the time, it underwhelms the crap out of me, and this one certainly falls into that category. As far as Smeargle, I mean, yeah, he adds a third spiker right at the end. Smeargle's interesting in this format. It's kind of gimmicky. It's kind of fishy. Like, sometimes it works, but you have to be so afraid with Smeargle in every lead matchup. Does the thing just have Lum? Insta wakes up from my Spore and just kills me. Certainly in Emerald Open it's worse, because when you know it's coming, like I said, you just lead Lum and you really negate the crap out of it. I guess if you were truly worried about Smeargle, you could lead Lum in every game in this format. That does not seem worthwhile to me, but it's a thing that you could do. Now, obviously, when you don't specifically tech out against it, Spore is a deadly move, and Smeargle can generate quite the advantage early on by sleeping something, multiple layers of spikes, clicking explosion, what have you. So, like, I see the on-paper merit of Smeargle. For me, a lot of the time, it's been more trouble than it's worth. I'm not personally the world's biggest Smeargle guy. If you have to add a spiker here, I guess it's an acceptable option. Is it better than, like, Quillfish or Cacturn? I don't know. Maybe. Probably comparable. So, like, it's an acceptable poke. I don't hate the pick, but I'm never going to be excited by it. And in my personal experience, Smeargle has been meh. But just to make sure that he doesn't get cut off of spinners, ALargeMongoose does, in fact, take a spinner with his final pick. He's going to grab Armaldo. Things like Blastoise and Tentacruel were still floating, but he decided that Armaldo was the best of the options. So even though Fat Yoshi does have the option of all three games having spikes, Mongoose subsequently has the option of... Am I making that up? Gonna say all three games having spin. I'm making that up. No, it was Fat Yoshi who took the Donphan. My bad. So fair enough. It is actually going to be Mongoose having two spinners. against 3 spikers from Yoshi. So if Yoshi were to bring a spiker in all 3 games, he could force a game where he has spikes and his opponent does not have spin. Fair enough. All right, looking at this, man, I don't know. I really, really don't know on this one. Usually I know before I start talking and doing my prediction thing at the end where I'm leaning. The vast majority of the time, I have a strong inclination throughout the draft. I really like this guy's position better, but this is not one of those times. I really don't know who I give the advantage to here. I mean, if I'm being a little biased, if I'm factoring in play skill to my prediction, then I guess I'd give the advantage to ALargeMongoose, who's currently 4-0 versus a 1-3 player. Now, granted, records aren't the be-all, end-all. There's variance. There's things that happen to get you there. But I guess if I just, pretended that the drafts were roughly equal and then assumed, possibly very incorrectly and ignorantly, I don't know, but assumed, based on the records, that ALargeMongoose is a better Pokemon player, then logically, theoretically, Mongoose should win. But if I predict just based on the draft, if I just pretend that both players are exactly perfectly equal, man, oh man, I really don't know. This is one of the closest ones that I've seen or that I've commented on. I really don't feel super strongly here one way or another. They split a lot of things. They split special walls. They split electrics. They split fighters. They're evenly matched in a lot of ways. They split spikers and spinners. I really don't know. This is a fascinating draft. I might give the tiniest edge to ALargeMongoose because he has fewer mons that I'm actively unhappy to play. Like, he's got a full squad of 21 that I'm generally happy with. Maybe I'm not, the world's biggest Sableye or Amaldo guy, but they're both at least, playable, whereas, if I'm playing Ampharos or Smeargle, and again, this is just my own bias, but if I'm playing either of those, and Dugtrio to an extent, I mean, it depends on the matchup, but if I'm playing Ampharos or Smeargle in general, or Dugtrio in this specific matchup, then I'm probably not that happy. I kind of don't want to play those. Now, granted, he could just not play those 3 specific mons, but, as far as holes, as far as oh, that guy's only okay, that guy's only, that guy's kind of situational, that guy's kind of narrow, I feel like there's a little bit more of that on Yoshi's team than there is on Mongoose's team, but not by an outrageous extent by any means. I really don't know. This is a mega toss-up for me. This is I'm really struggling with my prediction. This is one of the closest drafts that I have covered so far in this format, but I guess with the bias of thinking that Mongoose is maybe a slightly better player, and I guess by just a tiny nuanced niche nitpicky, there's fewer mons by a very small margin that I actively dislike on Mongoose's team than on Yoshi's team. I guess with that in mind, I will pick Mongoose, but I don't feel strongly about it at all, not even a little bit. You guys can let me know in the comments what you think. I'm truly torn on this one. But as always, I appreciate you guys watching, and when the games do happen, you know they'll be here on YouTube. I super duper have got to get to bed because I really do have to be up at 5 a.m. 4 hours from now. And I also need to fix this sheet. So that will be the end of the video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching.